You think you know sci-fi? Think again. The 1940s didn't just set the stage, they lit the fuse for everything that would explode later. Atomic age monsters, mutant mayhem, and robots taking names. But most folks skip this decade, treating it like a forgotten attic. Ever wondered what truly wild visions and cracked genius you're missing from America's forgotten B-movie labs? Buckle up, because some of these films changed the rules while everyone else was just playing catch-up. Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe, 1940. Let's talk about the original intergalactic smackdown. Forget polished space battles and billion-dollar effects. Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe is pure, raw sci-fi adrenaline. Picture this. World War II raging in the real world, and on screen, Earth faces the Purple Death, a plague launched by a power-mad emperor from another planet. Universal threw everything into this serial: cliffhangers, ray guns, wild costumes, and sets that look like Art Deco crashed into a comic book. Buster Crabbe returns as Flash, zipping from mountain showdowns to mad scientist labs, taking on Charles Middleton's Ming the Merciless, now styled less as a mystical villain and more like a dictator ripped from the headlines. Why does it matter? Because this isn't just a cheap adventure. The serial literally changed the language of sci-fi, rolling text intros, wild visual effects, even splicing German mountain footage to boost the spectacle. It's a masterclass in doing more with less. Even the recasting of Dale Arden, hello, Carol Hughes, didn't slow things down. Kids lined up for every episode, adults couldn't look away, and the DNA of Flash's weekly cliffhangers runs through everything from Star Wars to Marvel's TV episodes. If you've ever watched a hero fight evil on a timer, thank Flash. Sure, the sets are recycled, and some costumes might make you laugh out loud, but that's part of the fun. This is the blueprint for big-screen spectacle, before anyone had the budget for spectacle. Dr. Cyclops, 1940. Ready for a wild trip? Dr. Cyclops takes mad science to a whole new level, with eye-popping technicolor and a villain who's as brilliant as he is bonkers. The setup? Deep in the South American jungle, a scientist invites his colleagues for a little professional chat, then shrinks them to doll size with radiation. No, you didn't mishear that. This is the first American sci-fi movie to splash its weirdness across full-color film, and it looks incredible. Ernest B. Shudsack, the mastermind behind King Kong, directs this fever dream with an eye for scale and spectacle. Every scene is a cat-and-mouse game, only the cats are now giants and the scientists are dodging everything from angry cats to deadly traps. Albert Decker, as the diabolical Dr. Thorkel, gives us a villain who's half genius, half kid on a power trip. This wasn't just some cheap monster flick. Dr. Cyclops was nominated for an Oscar for its effects, and the use of color wasn't just for show, it made every surreal danger pop off the screen. Audiences at the time didn't know what hit them, and modern viewers still get a kick out of the bizarre premise. It's not highbrow sci-fi, but it's wildly inventive and more fun than it has any right to be. If you want to see where the tiny people in a giant world trope really took off, step right in. Dr. Cyclops is American sci-fi unfiltered, bold, weird, and still visually stunning. Before I Hang, 1940. If you think all mad scientists are the same, you haven't seen Boris Karloff in Before I Hang. This one throws a curveball at every corner. Karloff plays Dr. John Garth, a good man with a bad idea, curing aging. He's not out for glory, he just wants to end suffering. But when the law sentences him to death for euthanasia, the story spirals. Garth gets to keep tinkering in prison and cooks up a serum using the blood of a freshly executed murderer. What could go wrong, right? He injects himself, escapes the noose, and actually starts to turn back the clock. But science in the 1940s always comes with a twist. The murderer's evil seeps in, and Garth begins a chilling spree he can't control. This isn't just monster of the week stuff. Before I Hang is a meditation on the price of scientific ambition, and Karloff gives the performance everything he's got, equal parts tragedy and terror. Shot fast and cheap, yes, but it's got style. The film doesn't waste time with fake monsters. The real terror is inside. If you want to see the roots of every science goes too far story in later decades, here's your ground zero. It's as much a cautionary tale as a creepshow, and it's way more ambitious than the usual B-movie fare. The ending? Pure 1940s darkness, and you can't help but wonder, was Karloff's scientist really the villain or just the first casualty of human curiosity? The Man with Nine Lives 1940. Cryogenics and murder in the same breath? Only in the 1940s, and only with Boris Karloff pulling the strings. The Man with Nine Lives is a mad science time capsule. Dr. Leon Craval, obsessed with finding a cure for cancer, accidentally freezes himself and a group of doctors for a decade. When he's revived, the moral chaos kicks off: greed, betrayal, and the desperation to control life itself. Don't let the cheap sets fool you. This flick tackles big ideas before anyone had the guts to call it science fiction. What happens when you play with the laws of nature? Can you trust anyone in the pursuit of a miracle cure? The frozen in time premise was a wild leap for its era, a forerunner to every later tale of suspended animation and medical breakthroughs gone sideways. Karloff is magnetic as the haunted doctor, switching from genius to menacing at the flick of a switch. The real heart of the film is its skepticism about both progress and the people chasing it. If you want to see where half the science gone wrong cliches started, this is the route. The Man with Nine Lives isn't flashy, but it's smarter than it looks and doesn't let you off easy. It asks the kind of questions that keep sci-fi honest, even when the budget is running on fumes. The Ape 1940. Now buckle up, because things are about to get gloriously weird. The Ape isn't your average mad scientist flick, it's Karloff in a rubber ape suit, and if that doesn't grab you, I don't know what will. The setup is classic 1940s. Dr. Bernard Adrian, racked by grief after his daughter's death, will do anything to cure paralysis. Anything, including donning an ape disguise to harvest spinal fluid from unsuspecting townsfolk. Yes, you read that right. This is the kind of B-movie insanity that made American sci-fi legendary. Shot in a week, full of wild plot turns, and running on pure pulp energy, The Ape is both hilarious and deeply unsettling. Karloff, true to form, sells every ridiculous moment with total commitment, turning what could have been pure schlock into something weirdly compelling. But here's the kicker. Beneath the camp, The Ape asks real questions about obsession, ethics, and what happens when scientists throw away the rulebook. The film's cheap effects and rushed production just add to its twisted charm. It's not a classic in the way critics mean it, but it's the kind of movie that stuck in people's heads and inspired generations of midnight movie lovers. If you're looking for the heart of outsider American sci-fi, ambitious, flawed, and totally fearless, look no further. The Devil Bat 1940. If you ever wanted to see Bela Lugosi weaponize aftershave, The Devil Bat is your new guilty pleasure. This one is bonkers in the best way possible. Lugosi plays Dr. Paul Carruthers, a chemist who's been cheated by his wealthy employers. His revenge? A special scent that makes you irresistible to his genetically engineered giant killer bats. Forget capes and fangs. Here, science takes a wild left turn, and the real monster is an angry genius with a grudge and a love for bizarre biology. The Devil Bat is pulpy American sci-fi at its most unhinged. The film barely had a budget, so you get to see papier-mâché bats swooping through model windows, actors ducking on cue, and some truly creative lighting to sell the horror. What it lacks in polish, it makes up for in twisted energy. Lugosi is at his scene-stealing best, playing it completely straight while chaos reigns around him. But beneath the drive-in movie madness, there's a real theme. Technology turned toxic, science as revenge. The Devil Bat became a cult favorite, and the science experiment gone rogue plotline was a hit that spawned sequels and even a modern reboot. If you want to understand why American sci-fi horror is so obsessed with mad inventors, check out this B-movie blueprint. It's not high art, but it's a wild, entertaining ride, and it'll make you think twice about free samples at the perfume counter. The Invisible Man Returns 1940. You think sequels are a modern game? Think again. The Invisible Man Returns is proof that 1940s sci-fi was all about pushing the envelope, especially when it came to what special effects could do. This time, the Invisible Man isn't a cackling villain, but a wrongly accused man on the run, played with surprising heart by a young Vincent Price. Here's the twist. Instead of a wild power trip, the story centers on clearing his name and wrestling with the serum's dangerous side effects, including creeping madness. The effects, floating cigarettes, footsteps in the dust, doors opening with no one there, were nothing short of jaw-dropping in 1940 and scored an Oscar nomination. Universal amped up the tension with moody lighting and a new angle. What if the Invisible Man was someone you could root for? This film helped make Price a genre star and proved sequels could deepen a story instead of just recycling old tricks. Sure, some critics said the invisible gag was getting stale, but they missed the point. Every time a new filmmaker tried to outdo these effects, the entire genre leveled up. The Invisible Man Returns is part detective thriller, part mad science fever dream, and totally unforgettable. If you love suspense with your sci-fi, this is where it started getting smart. The Invisible Woman, 1940. Let's get weird. The Invisible Woman is what happens when sci-fi takes a sharp left turn into screwball comedy, and it works. Universal, always looking to stretch their monster universe, decided to go for laughs, casting Virginia Bruce as Kitty Carroll, a tough-talking model who volunteers to be made invisible. The plan? Get back at her overbearing boss with hijinks and gangsters not far behind. This wasn't just a genre experiment, it was a signal that sci-fi could play in any sandbox, not just horror or suspense. The film's tone is playful and light, complete with slapstick gags, invisible pranks, and a cast of supporting actors clearly having a blast. The special effects are surprisingly sharp for the era, giving Kitty free rein to turn her troubles upside down, literally. Critics at the time were divided, with some dismissing it as silly fluff, but that's missing the fun. The Invisible Woman made it clear. Science fiction didn't have to be all doom and gloom, and that opened the doors for decades of wild genre mashups. From Men in Black to Ghostbusters, you can thank Kitty Carroll for proving that sci-fi could be just as funny as it was freaky. And hey, it's a rare 1940s film where the woman is the one holding all the power, even if you can't see her. Black Friday, 1940. Now we're in real mad science territory. Black Friday is the brainchild of Universal's Monster Team and delivers a punchy blend of gangster drama and split-personality sci-fi. Boris Karloff is back, but don't expect him to just stand around looking ominous. He's Dr. Ernest Sovak, a scientist desperate to save his friend's life after a car accident. The fix? Transplant part of a gangster's brain into his dying pal. What follows is a Jekyll and Hyde meltdown. The once mild professor is now flipping personalities. 1 minute sweet, the next a violent criminal hunting for lost loot. Karloff and Bela Lugosi headline, but it's Stanley Ridges as the tormented friend who really steals the show. The film zips from suspense to shootouts, with science always lurking as the cause of everyone's misery. This flick is a clinic in genre cross-pollination. You've got noir, horror, and science fiction all in one, plus an early take on identity crisis that modern thrillers would milk for decades. Critics at the time were mixed, but Black Friday's blend of Mad Labs and mobsters gave sci-fi a new swagger and a blueprint for psychological science fiction that would haunt movie screens long after the credits rolled. Invisible Agent, 1942. If you want spy-fi before Bond, Invisible Agent is where sci-fi got tangled up with Webber-Utwi Cloak and Dagger. Universal took their Invisible Man formula and lobbed it straight into wartime, giving us John Hall as Frank Raymond, the grandson of the original Invisible Man. When Axis spies try to get the family secret, Raymond uses his grandfather's serum to go behind enemy lines, unseen, unstoppable, and constantly dodging Nazis. What makes this film stand out isn't just its wild mix of invisibility and espionage, but its gonzo effects and lightning pace. Here, invisibility isn't a curse, it's the ultimate secret weapon. The story has invisible sabotage, slapstick escapes, and a parade of wartime caricatures that range from menacing to hilarious. The effects were genuinely mind-blowing for their time. Floating cigarettes, untied shoelaces, and invisible brawls that still look clever today. While it's a pure product of wartime Hollywood complete with propaganda jabs at the enemy, Invisible Agent broke new ground by turning sci-fi into a battlefield asset. Its blend of genre thrills and real-world tension proved science fiction could be timely, thrilling, and just a little bit unhinged. The invisible spy idea would echo through pop culture for decades, and Universal's effects wizards set a bar that's still tough to clear. Want to see where super spy and sci-fi first shook hands? Start here, if you can spot him. Man-Made Monster, 1941. If you ever wondered where the whole science creates superhuman monsters idea took off, look no further than Man-Made Monster. Universal Studios, always hungry for a new thrill, brought in Lon Chaney Jr. as the unlucky Dynamo Dan, a sideshow performer who survives a bus crash only to land in the clutches of a mad scientist. The villain, played with slick menace by Lionel Atwill, has one dream: turn Dan into an electrically charged, mind-controlled zombie. It's Frankenstein with a lightning bolt twist, only grittier and way more shocking. Man-Made Monster isn't subtle. There are glowing veins, crazy lab equipment, and a climax that turns the whole movie into an electrified chase scene. It's the first taste of the human weapon plot that would explode in comic books and TV decades later. Lon Chaney Jr., about to become Universal's go-to monster man, gives his all as a doomed gentle giant whose transformation makes you root for and fear him in equal measure. What really makes this film stand out is its speed and style. It's tight, relentless, and almost feels like it's daring you to keep up. The story may be simple, but the influence is huge. Without Man-Made Monster, you don't get your super soldiers, your comic book mutants, or half the mad science gone rogue stories that filled Saturday afternoons for years to come. Sometimes all it takes is a jolt to spark a whole new kind of monster. The Monster and the Girl, 1941. If you think old Hollywood didn't get wild, buckle up for The Monster and the Girl. This film is one part gangster noir, one part mad science fever dream, and somehow it all works. The premise? A mild-mannered man gets framed by the mob, executed, and then, here's the kicker, has his brain transplanted into a gorilla by a scientist who's off his rocker. Suddenly, the gorilla is stalking the city, picking off gangsters one by one. What sets this film apart isn't just the insane plot, though. Let's be honest, it's a showstopper. But the way it plays with big ideas. What makes us human? Can justice ever really be served? And what happens when science is used to settle scores? For a 1941 B-movie, it's weirdly philosophical and a ton of fun to watch. The Monster and the Girl pushes boundaries for its time, blending horror, crime, and sci-fi without blinking. The gorilla suit may look silly now, but the atmosphere is moody, the story is tight, and the revenge plot is pure pulp gold. It's not a blockbuster, but its willingness to go full tilt crazy gave later filmmakers permission to color outside the lines. Want your sci-fi with a side of mob justice and existential dread? This is where to start. The Mad Monster, 1942. Imagine a mad scientist with a grudge, a loyal handyman who's way too trusting, and a secret serum that turns people into wolf-like killers. That's The Mad Monster, another slice of early 40s sci-fi that's way more than a werewolf knockoff. George Zucco plays Dr. Cameron, a man who thinks society laughed at his ideas, so he decides to unleash a living, breathing monster as revenge. The formula: injecting wolf blood into his handyman and sending him out to terrorize the countryside. What makes The Mad Monster more than just a midnight movie is its relentless focus on science as both hope and horror. Dr. Cameron isn't evil for the fun of it. He's hurt, bitter, and blinded by ambition. The transformation scenes are cheap but effective, and the rural setting gives the whole thing a sweaty, claustrophobic vibe. This is classic mad science, ambitions that outpace ethics, experiments that backfire, and innocent lives caught in the crossfire. While the budget is low and the effects are vintage, the film's mood and message stick with you. It's a direct ancestor of the DNA Gone Wild movies that would rule the 1950s and beyond. The Mad Monster is no beauty, but it's got real bite, and it never apologizes for how crazy things get. The Corpse Vanishes, 1942. You want pulpy American sci-fi with a side of real weird? The Corpse Vanishes serves it up. Bela Lugosi is at his absolute creepiest as Dr. Lorenz, a botanist with a taste for eternal youth at any cost. His plan? Kidnap young brides on their wedding day, drain them of life with a mysterious serum, and use their essence to keep his wife looking like she's fresh out of a beauty pageant. If that's not wild enough, his lair is hidden in a Gothic mansion full of secret passages and freaky servants. This movie is a fever dream of mad science and pulp villainy. Lugosi oozes charm and menace, making the absurd plot feel just believable enough to keep you hooked. There's no supernatural magic here, just twisted experiments, and science gone totally haywire. Every set piece is dripping with atmosphere, and the suspense keeps piling up as a feisty reporter starts connecting the dots. The Corpse Vanishes is the kind of flick that would later inspire 1,000 knockoffs, from aging madmen to desperate doctors. It's pure B-movie fuel, burning bright on style and swagger even when the plot goes off the rails. If you want a lesson in how American sci-fi horror made its mark, creepy, campy, and totally original, this is a must-watch. The Ape Man, 1943. Talk about dedication to the bit. Bela Lugosi's at it again, and this time he's not just experimenting on others, he's the guinea pig. In The Ape Man, Lugosi plays Dr. Brewster, a scientist so deep into his work he accidentally turns himself into a part ape, part man hybrid. You can't make this stuff up. Desperate for a cure, Brewster believes only injections of human spinal fluid will fix him. Cue a parade of victims and some truly unhinged lab scenes. This movie is nuts. But that's why it works. There's a wild energy to every frame, strange sidekicks, dimly lit labs, and a main character who's both tragic and terrifying. The Ape Man makeup may look silly now, but back then it was nightmare fuel for midnight audiences. And Lugosi, ever the pro, manages to squeeze real pathos out of a script that asks him to grunt as much as it asks him to plot. The Ape Man is a classic example of 1940s American sci-fi not caring about respectability, just swinging for the fences. It's got ambition, attitude, and a monster that's both the victim and the villain. Later mutation movies owe a lot to this mad little flick. If you want your science fiction wild, weird, and a little bit bananas, look no further. Captive Wild Woman, 1943. Ever heard of a gorilla becoming a glamorous showgirl? Welcome to Captive Wild Woman, where Hollywood's obsession with transformation meets pure pulp science. This universal shocker is all about a scientist with an ego and a laboratory full of wild ideas. The plot: Dr. Sigmund Walters, played with cold brilliance by John Carradine, grabs a female gorilla and injects her with human hormones and gland extracts. Next thing you know, she's turned into the mysterious and beautiful Paula Dupree. It sounds bonkers, and it absolutely is. The filmmakers knew exactly what they were doing, crossing King Kong with Dr. Jekyll and mixing in a dash of sideshow melodrama. The result is both wacky and weirdly compelling. Aquanetta, cast as Paula, brings a silent animal intensity that's half threat and half tragic victim. She never speaks, but you feel every ounce of confusion and rage bubbling under the surface. This film wasn't just a one-off, it kicked off its own mini-franchise, with sequels popping up across the decade. The story plays on 1940s anxieties about science, progress, and what happens when humans mess with nature. Sure, it's a mad science circus, but it's also a key early entry in the genetics gone wild subgenre. Captive Wild Woman doesn't pull its punches or worry about subtlety. It's all spectacle and shock, exactly what made 1940s sci-fi unforgettable. The Mad Doctor of Market Street, 1942. If you think the 1940s didn't know how to go off the rails, meet The Mad Doctor of Market Street. This universal oddity drops us right into the warped mind of Dr. Benson, a so-called scientist who's a little too obsessed with pushing the boundaries of medical research. When one of his experiments in suspended animation goes sideways, he flees San Francisco and ends up shipwrecked on a remote Pacific island. Stranded among frightened survivors and suspicious locals, Benson does what any good 1940s movie villain would. He uses his twisted genius to set himself up as a godlike figure. Promising miraculous cures and eternal life, he's soon ruling the island with an iron fist and a manic glint in his eye. But his reign comes with a price, and before long, both the natives and his fellow castaways are plotting their escape from his care. The Mad Doctor of Market Street isn't a prestige picture, it's pure pulpy B-movie mayhem, running just over an hour and crammed with jungle peril, wild experiments, and a villain so over the top he's almost fun to watch. The science is dubious, the dialogue is rapid-fire, and the moral is clear. Never trust a doctor with a secret lab and an attitude. It's not as famous as other universal horror sci-fi hybrids, but for fans of mad scientists and tropical trouble, it's a forgotten gem that delivers a full dose of 1940s American sci-fi style. The Brute Man, 1946. If you're looking for tragedy and terror in your 1940s sci-fi, The Brute Man delivers a gut punch. Rondo Hatton, whose real-life struggles with acromegaly gave him a unique look, plays Hal Moffat, a once brilliant college athlete turned monstrous by a chemical accident in a lab. Disfigured and shunned, he becomes a shadowy killer, haunting the city and targeting those he blames for his fate. What sets The Brute Man apart isn't just its chills, but its aching sense of loss. Moffat isn't just a monster, he's a victim of bad science, rejected by society and left to spiral out of control. The movie digs into themes of isolation and revenge, asking just how much blame lies with the experimenters and the bystanders who turned their backs. The Brute Man is less flashy than many on this list, but it's loaded with atmosphere and pathos. Universal's last classic monster film, it marked the end of an era and pointed toward a future where monsters were as much about sympathy as fear. If you want your sci-fi with a tragic edge and a dash of real-world pain, The Brute Man is essential viewing. The Face of Marble, 1946. Ever wanted a sci-fi mad scientist flick with a side of genuine weirdness? The Face of Marble delivers just that. Dr. Charles Randolph is a man obsessed with conquering death itself. In his gloomy mansion laboratory, he experiments on reanimating corpses, with the reluctant help of his wife and his assistant. Things take a dark turn when their latest experiment doesn't just bring a body back, but somehow unleashes ghostly and supernatural forces they can't control. What makes this film stand out isn't just the pulpy mad science, it's the mix of gothic suspense, eerie lighting, and a growing sense of doom as the experiment spirals out of control. There's a zombie dog, a haunted house, and a hero who keeps pushing ethical boundaries in the name of science. John Carradine brings sinister flair as the ambitious Dr. Randolph, while the rest of the cast sells the mounting fear as everything unravels. While The Face of Marble leans toward horror, the central conflict is all science run amok, tapping into that classic 1940s dread of what might happen if we push nature too far. It's a creepy, atmospheric, and sometimes downright bonkers B-movie that's been overshadowed by bigger studio hits, but it packs enough inventive, original weirdness to deserve a spot on any list of forgotten American sci-fi from the era. King of the Zombies, 1941. Don't let the title fool you. King of the Zombies is less horror and more pulp science fiction, with a satirical bite that still feels sharp today. The story follows a trio of heroes who crash land on a remote island during World War II and stumble onto a mad scientist's mind control experiments. Instead of supernatural voodoo, the zombies here are created by science, hypnosis, radio waves, and chemicals. What makes this movie memorable isn't just the wild plot, but the presence of Mantan Moreland as Jeff, the quick-witted sidekick who gets some of the best lines and steals every scene. The film pokes fun at everything from mad doctors to wartime propaganda, delivering laughs and chills in equal measure. King of the Zombies is a perfect example of early sci-fi blending comedy, adventure, and futuristic tech into a genre all its own. It's got nerve, it's got energy, and it proves that 1940s American sci-fi wasn't afraid to get weird or have a little fun along the way. If you want to see how mind control, mad science, and monster tropes first got mashed together, give this overlooked gem a spin. So, next time someone tells you classic sci-fi didn't get good until the 50s, send them back to the wild, unpredictable playground of the 1940s. This was the decade where mad science ran loose, monsters got complicated, and the rules of the genre were rewritten by outsiders with nothing to lose. What did we miss? Which forgotten freakout deserves a comeback? Drop your picks below, hit subscribe for more film history deep dives, and keep questioning what's really possible on screen.